The following episode contains details of an attempted suicide. If you or someone you know has had thoughts of suicide or expressed thoughts of suicide, please do not hesitate to call the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 988, or you can text TX to 741-741. There are counselors standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are also counselors who speak Spanish. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when your emotional well-being seems to be taking a nosedive in the wrong direction? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is LifeJack, the Resilience Podcast. LifeJack is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Bruce Schutter, left the corporate arena and created the Mental Health Warrior Program to help others who experience mental health struggles like he did. Challenges such as bipolar disorder, alcoholism, general anxiety disorder, and others. His program is replete with guidance, tools, and books he has written, including his cornerstone book, I Triumphed Over Bipolar, Alcoholism, and Anxiety Disorder by Becoming a Mental Health Warrior, and the Mental Health Warrior Challenge coin with warrior wisdom that he designed and produced to provide daily tangible motivation. Bruce struggled with bipolar, alcoholism, and anxiety disorders for over 20 years until he reached a pivotal moment where he no longer wanted to be part of that world. With a second chance, he set out to find an answer. He discovered mental health holds the key. So he created a program to equip everyone with tools and a mindset to conquer their battles. This program is about self-empowerment, and his transformative journey is a testament to the human spirit. Hi, Bruce. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing very good. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Now, first off, I want to say congratulations. You've had about 16 years of sobriety, right? What an accomplishment.
Yes, and actually kind of interesting, the 16 years of sobriety coincides with when I also started to take care of my mental health challenges, like you mentioned, like bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder. And what I mean by that is where I really started to be proactive on them. So I really appreciate the congratulations, and it kind of always reminds me that it wasn't just one problem. I've started tackling everything and really taking charge of my life again.
Wow, remarkable. Now, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? Maybe a little bit about your early years, your career, your family, anything that you would like to share.
Well, I was born and grew up in Pennsylvania, and then started traveling around after I went to college, where I went in Pennsylvania also, but then with jobs, and then when I met my wife, and progressed moving around a lot. So I kind of chuckle when people ask this question because we have gone from everywhere from New Jersey up to New Hampshire to Wisconsin, back to Tennessee. And just recently we moved back to PA. So kind of come full circle. We're really excited. It's kind of like a lot of times with careers and jobs, you make plans and then life takes you in different directions. As you mentioned, I started out with an IT degree and I started working in the IT field. But as my challenges grew and grew, while on the outside and while I'm working in that field for 15, 16 years, things are crumbling inside. And my life is looking good on the outside and terrible on the inside as I get worse and worse. Interesting journey as I go around. And at the time, like I mentioned, I'm going through a lot of the normal stuff and going through your everyday career stuff, friends, family, buying a house type things, moving. But a lot of it has come around full circle. And it's interesting because at that point, my life has taken into a different direction, as you mentioned, and also things I never would have imagined, which are all good things. So it has been quite a ride so far.
Yes, because life in general is quite a ride. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yes. So while you were dealing with all of those challenges, and I really appreciate you being transparent and vulnerable during this conversation. So would you mind sharing a bit about, your mental health journey, the struggles that, when you first noticed something was going on and something was different, and then the pivotal moment that made you say, you know what, this is nuts. Like I've got to, no pun intended, saying this is nuts.
Yep.
Like I've got to take control of me.
Well, what happened was, so I like to tell people I started out and back when I was in high school, I knew things were different. I just knew there were some struggles I was going through, like where my emotions always went to the end of the spectrum. I didn't seem to know anything in between. But I never knew, and there was no discussion at that time, so I didn't have any data to put a name to this. You didn't really go to doctors to talk about this at that time. And it progressed. And what happened was, though, interestingly enough, while I was in high school, some friends of mine, we joined a local rescue squad and became an EMT, took the training, ended up even driving the ambulance before I was out of high school, and volunteering and all of that. I liken that to I jumped into the deep end of the pool of life, because not only did I have your normal things growing up, but suddenly I'm facing literally like a life and death challenges and people that have died in my hands in some of those cases. And it just threw me where it sort of accelerated my journey in that I didn't know how to handle emotions. And essentially at that point, I started running, using any short-term solution I could to go away and hide from my emotions, or to get through them, if you will, not though in a good sense. And so what happened was, as I mentioned, these challenges, the bipolar disorder, alcoholism was my way to basically hide and run for emotions, or an anxiety disorder, again, use alcohol. So they all combined, they all kind of coalesced into, they started taking more and more control every day. A lot of the activities I did, how I approached things, even as I got out of college and into work, a lot of my choices were dictated by those fears or those emotions that would come up. And what happened was, as I mentioned, I'm moving along on the outside. I'm still going after things, I'm going on business trips and things, but everything becomes increasingly difficult. And like I mentioned, I'm crumbling on the inside. I'm going home after a fantastic day and sinking into deep depression. Bipolar is not treated. Anxiety disorder is not treated. Even the times I went to get help, there just wasn't a lot of discussion about it. So I didn't know what to do. And as you mentioned, what happened was, after 20 years of this going on, when I got into 40 years old, and I literally felt so powerless and felt I had no choice. There was no solution even I could see on the table. As you mentioned, at that point, I tried to end it all. I tried to commit suicide. And I said, I didn't see any way out. That's how desperate. That was my turning point. And that's how far down the emotions took me. And then, as you mentioned, what happened was, when I got a second chance, and I was so amazed by that, and I said, I have to do something about it. And that was where that moment came, and I said, I have to find an answer. And funny enough, I like to tell people the answer was the same one that took me down. Emotions are so powerful, and in such every aspect of life, everything from our good to bad, and what makes life amazing. That was also the solution. And I had missed it the whole time. And I feel a lot of us, we miss it due to stigma and not wanting to talk about it. And a lot of times focusing on the bad, the negative aspects of mental health and challenges, disorders. So that was my big turning point. And that's the quick summation of the journey and how much power they have to show you where it took me. But then it was also the power that helped me rise up and start this whole new way and this whole mental health warrior program.
Wow. And I have to ask you, because I know a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of guests on my show, people I just know in life, They say on the outside you look totally normal, and the struggles are happening on the inside. It's just you're just constantly conflicted. And so did you ever have anybody along your journey that maybe mentioned something to you, and perhaps you ignored it, but maybe looking back now, right? Somebody may have mentioned something or said something to you. Did that ever happen?
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it. I mean, my wife, my family, there were different times we tried to talk about it. Of course, the drinking is kind of obvious when it causes a lot of problems each day. I knew, even myself, I knew there were these problems. The biggest struggle was that no matter how much people tried to talk, it was either rush into a solution, you just need to do this and you'll have to do this the rest of your life, kind of a very negative approach, in my opinion. That was like, there was no positive to it. There was no inspiration. If you do this, you can fix your life and things. So there were lots of conversations, lots of awareness points. But as anybody who knows, when you're in the middle of the struggles, you kind of think, well, I'll just go with what I can do. I'll go with the tried and true, even though I know it's not going to work. I just want to get through the day. I want to get through that meeting. And again, the biggest thing is anybody who has struggles, we become really good at hiding it, or not even necessarily trying to hide it, but you end up covering it up, putting on that good smiley face, like you're saying, on the front. And everybody, a lot of people, they knew there were some struggles, but they saw these things going well. They saw the life going well. They saw me being involved in 100 activities. What they didn't see was all that struggle, like you mentioned, before every single event, with that anxiety disorder, or between the nights or the times at 2 a.m. when my mind is spinning out of control. And so that's another reason that I was really wanted to start this program, was to help people break through that, where we can have that conversation. Because like you said, it's really hard, because it's so hard to see what's behind the scenes. The surface always looks good, and behind the scenes, it's a whole different story.
I'm going to mention and highlight your program, the Mental Health Warrior Program. Now, how does your particular program differ from any other mental health initiatives or program? Like, what about the Mental Health Warrior Program is unique that really will help people that struggle with the same mental health challenges that you have?
Well, I built the Warrior Program. First off, even just the name, that was one of my first things I wanted to challenge people on, or inspire them with, if you will, is that mental health is not a weakness. And it took me down, but it has allowed me to live this amazing life now these days, where I'm comfortable with all the emotions and I'm getting what I call the full life experience. So the first part is, being a warrior is a great, powerful first step. The biggest next piece of the whole program is it's really built on a self-help approach, which I like to say is self-help / self-empowerment. And the best part of that is, these are things you can do. Again, I built this around essentially lifestyle changes and mindset changes, kind of everyday activities too, things you can do throughout your day so you don't interrupt your day. And basically what you can do is build that power from the inside out. And the idea is, that's really where it starts. Because my biggest struggle, for example, in starting this, was I had to get comfortable with my challenges. I had to get comfortable that I had some problems and they were going away. And that's a lot of what kept and gave them the power, gave my challenges the power for that 20 years, was even I didn't want to admit it. No matter how many people, like you said, talked about it, we have to break through and we have to get comfortable with it. So my biggest thing to remind people is that we have all this power and we can do something with it, and we are not powerless. And so that's kind of the core difference on being a mental health warrior. It's all about self-help, which also is, if you keep putting in the work each day, you can build your confidence. You can build where you want to go in life and set that direction. And these are all things that I had lost through the challenges, and you can gain them all back.
I love that your program focuses on self-empowerment. I mean, one of the greatest things in life is when you have self-empowerment. And I wish that while people spend a lot of time trying to exert their power over others, if they took that same amount of and then turned it inward into themselves, it would be a really remarkable thing. Now, can you kind of go more into more detail about that self-empowerment and how it really plays a crucial role in overcoming mental challenges.
Sure. What happens is, if you think about it, if you were to want to just talk about mental health, and it's funny, we think, oh, we have to talk about it, we're going to talk to friends, family, my wife, I'm going to talk to close people. But really the conversation starts with ourselves. And if we're not accepting it, and that's the biggest, most powerful first step. So one of the things I do is with this first book is give a bit of structure. And we have 4 components as being a warrior. And one of the things is the warrior creed. Because you start out to be a warrior, we kind of need a creed. And, we can chuckle a bit because you can picture a warrior on the field, going into the field of battle. But the warrior creed here is bend, not break. And I'm trying to show people that the strength to deal with emotions, the strength to deal with anything in life, a lot of it comes from that being able to weave through challenges. Don't let them knock you over. Don't let them take over control. And secondly, the neat part of, again, we're talking self-empowerment, is that one of the biggest things I found is that we can weave through life's challenges because life will always throw challenges. And as we gain strength, we can do new things, but funny enough comes with that new challenges. The best part of that is, as we mentioned, we're building our strength inside because that gives us the power. So we're not depending on outside support. We're depending on what we can do. And that will build you the confidence. And I like to tell people it builds the confidence, especially for me, so that there are times, when I'm all alone or when I'm maybe out on a trip and it's just me, and let's just say my alcoholism's still there, and it would be easy to go get a drink because I'm stressed out. So you have to be able to handle things when you're on your own. And that's really what the warrior program gives you the power to do. And also, like we've mentioned, and other people, like, that 2 a.m, you wake up, racing thoughts, maybe everything seems completely horrible. How do you get through that? And there's not a lot of people you can call at 2 a.m. So again, you have that self-empowerment piece if you have the tools, and there are plenty of them with the warrior program to help yourself get through that.
Now, you have a couple of key principles that you use throughout your program. And one that I want to point out is the one that you have that you suggest that people should respond and not react to life challenges, which that is a challenge within itself. Like, so I would not react around you because, like, that's just exactly the term life jack. The life jack is like, hey, I'm going along, and then something happens, and it like jacks with my life, and it's like, what the hell, And so,
yep.
How can you just, if you can, elaborate? How can one make this mindset shift? And then when they do, like, how impactful can it be on someone's life from day to day?
Okay, yeah. So one of the things is, as I mentioned, there's these 4 components. So we got the creed, we have our values that set the direction for our life, and then we have 2 sets of warrior tools. And the reason I throw that out is one of them is called mindset rules. And respond, not react is actually number 2. I felt it was that important. And of course, everybody always asks what's number 1, which is make your mental health a priority. So I call that the duh rule. But it's there, and mindset rules are there to remind you of these truths or certain things in life that can really help you out, because life gets so frantic, so hectic, especially these days with our high tech, our gadgets everywhere, totally in connection with everybody 24/7. So one of the biggest things I found, and I put this as mindset rule number 2, is to respond, not react to life's challenges. And I've asked it, people have asked me, and I actually started this way too, is to literally take a pause. And it might be a couple seconds. So when you get into an emotional situation, get that challenge, like you said, it pops out of the blue. And I don't care if you're in traffic and all of a sudden your anger comes up because traffic is just terrible, or if you have that crisis or some big bill comes in the mail or any type of life challenge pops up. When we take a pause, and eventually you can take a pause kind of in your head, you will find that you will make 100% better choices, because you give your brain just a little bit of time to process those emotions and to pick a better outcome or choice. And I found that was a huge difference, because a lot of times when we're reacting, we are just letting our emotions, if you will, run rampant, or letting the challenge even run. And so what we do is we literally put a pause in, give ourselves a little time to process it, and then you'll see other solutions. You'll say, oh, wait, I know this worked last time. But if you react right away, you might miss that. So the best way I tell people is to use this. One of the things you mentioned, I threw this on the back of one of the warrior coins. So I carry it around, and I've had people carry it, and funny enough, they bring it with them to meetings. They bring it, and it's just enough pause to give them so that they can handle any challenge that comes up, even in a business meeting. And I thought that was fantastic because it shows how powerful that is to give ourselves a little time to get an answer and to trust ourselves with that answer, build that answer from within again. So that's why I hold this as one of the core things that as a warrior we learn to do. And then I guess what I want to add is the warrior has all sorts of tools and things, as you mentioned, a variety of books and mindset changes and lifestyle changes you can make. So you have plenty of actions and solutions to choose from. But again, it's really important that we give ourselves just a minute to think of it, or just a few seconds even. And you'll find everything will still go on. You'll still be able to handle the challenge, and it will be a much better result.
It's interesting that you mentioned tools, because I know that you talk about building a mental health tool belt. So now most times the main thing I always hear when it comes to managing mental health and taking care of your mental health is meditation, or some yoga, or some form of meditation, prayer, whatever it may be. So like that seems to be everybody's go-to. Like that's the first thing. If you meditate, right, then you can take care of your mind and it will solve everything.
Right.
Right. So,
yep.
But I'm assuming though it's probably a little bit more than that, and you probably have some essential tools that you can recommend specifically for some of us out here who may be struggling with mental health challenges.
Yeah. So a little bit of self-promotion here. Sorry, I hate to sound like a salesman person, but so there's been so many ideas and so many ways I've found that worked in my life that I have actually created 9 different books. And some of the books represent lifestyle changes, and some of them give you things like those mindset rules we talked about. There's actually a book with a library of 53 of them. So when I talk about building a mental health tool belt, it's kind of a variety of tools. It's also a variety of warrior weapons you can have combined with lifestyle changes. So some of the things I like to show people you can do is another mindset rule that I always love and always talk to people about is mindset rule 12. So this is another one where you can kind of you can write it on a scrap of paper, you can carry it with you. And it reminds us to focus our energy on solutions, not problems. And what we're saying there is I like to use my own challenges and say, if I just focus on, wow, I have bipolar and it's not going away, I'm going to have the rest of my life, and oh, this is terrible, well, I'm going to get nowhere. And that is what happened before. I just saw the challenges. People kept piling on more of the challenges and saying, these are your struggles. You're kind of stuck. You're going to have to limit things. And I said, no. What if I started focusing on the solutions? And that allowed me to switch my mindset. And you can do that a lot. So if you're faced with a big challenge, something you can grab from your tool belt is to remind yourself and say, well, I know I have this big problem. I'm going to put my energy into the solution. And pretty soon you'll start moving forward on that solution, and your whole life will change. The whole way you look at that challenge will change to a positive. Now, on the flip side, one of the things I like to remind people is lifestyle changes are also really effective. So I have a couple books. One of them is 3 food rules, because food and what we eat and how our body processes it can help our mental health. And if you eat a certain diet with these 3 food rules, you can build strong mental health, like I call it, one bite at a time or one plate at a time. So another thing I like to remind people is this tool belt is things we're doing every day and how we approach your eating. So, of course, if you're going to load yourself up on the sugar and go on the roller coaster of sugar, everybody kind of knows that's not going to set you up to handle any mental health challenges. So another thing on your tool belt is to say, hey, I can use these food rules. I can eat a certain way, and it'll keep me in a more calm state. It'll keep me with mental clarity. And it's fantastic because that plays into building strong mental health. And then, of course, I'll give you one last one, is I also have a book of tools. And so we're literal tools, like you were saying, kind of what you expect. Now, I don't have yoga or anything those like that, but I have some fun ones. One of the ones I love to do for racing thoughts, or if you have anxiety, it's about to take over. And I call it the swerve tool. And literally, I will use this any time of the day because you don't have to say it out loud. But if you do, it's kind of funny and it works. If you just get stuck in racing thoughts or you feel anxiety or depression creeping in, you can just go swerve. And your brain sort of says, what did he just say? Or what did she just say? Why would I swerve? Why would I go right or left? And it stops the thoughts for a minute, kind of like that pause we talked about. And it gives you a chance to realize maybe everything's not so bad. Maybe that anxiety or that meeting I was going to the next morning, it's not going to be that bad, and you can regain control. So I do have some tools like that, and I like to say the tool belt is very vast and very deep as a mental health warrior. And that's what I try to show with all the different books is you can pick any of these areas that work for your life, and you can really build strong mental health, which puts you in a great position to take on any challenge and triumph over it.
Now, I love that. Because I have moments, I struggle with anxiety just a little bit. Over the years, though, I've found coping mechanisms to help me. But I like that swerve. I'll just say swerve, because really I've learned that anxiety comes from when your subconscious and your conscious conflict on whatever decision you need to make moving forward. And so then it causes conflict and then anxiety. And I think I like that. I will definitely use that swerve. That's really awesome.
Excellent. It's fun. And there's always other fun ones, like even just things like I have another one. And I'll throw a quirky one since we're having some fun with this. But I call it the reverse sauna. So, you go and sit in a sauna and you sweat. Well, I started this because when we were in Wisconsin, you got a long winter. And sometimes at night to clear my head and recenter my emotions, we would on the way home roll down the windows, kind of the chill effect of reverse sauna. But that crisp air and it just enjoying the quiet, a lot of times there was the snow out, it made for a really calming and a great way to end the day. No matter how much stress you were in, it allowed you to recenter and walk into that house ready to either relax or to get excited about the next day. So I also have some fun tools like that where you get to have some fun. And it's, again, just using something that fits a lifestyle. You can do it while you're driving home. I say before, if you can say it anywhere. And the great part of that is we don't disrupt our day, but we actually strengthen, us moving forward at that point.
I love it. Now, forgiveness is a significant aspect of your program. How so?
Well, the biggest problem we have with mental health challenges, especially things like what I'm going through, is that we'll make poor decisions. And especially with my alcoholism, there are a lot of bad decisions, a lot of times I got in trouble and did things, as I mentioned, those bad situations just kept escalating as my challenges took over to what was commonplace to me was, like you had mentioned, kind of like, wow, how could that be common? And it still didn't stop me. So I had a lot of things to forgive myself, like times that I spent with the law and going into jail, or times where I actually was committed for like a 3-day hold. And I had to talk my way out and realize, this is in between holding a job now too. So my weekend spent trying to convince them that I know and can handle my mental health illness. Now I'm working on it, but of course that does not come with a lot of great history. So forgiveness was a huge part. And the way I did that was, and what I encourage everybody to do, is to remember first, we all struggle. And there is nobody who doesn't have challenges. And you can even look at the stats, and eventually everybody will run into some type of challenges, and your struggles, they will cause you to make some bad choices because, again, none of us are perfect. But the great way you can build forgiveness is to take all those life lessons and put them in today's actions. So one of the things that I do, and I remember every time when I get down or think of a time when I was not making a good choice or I wasn't stepping up and doing things well, what I do is I put a little extra effort into today, and I use that as my motivation, and I try to build the best I can do today. And the best part of that is to remind yourself that when you build today, when you work on today, well, you're building a great tomorrow. So what we're doing is we're actually kind of addressing the past, forgiving ourselves by acting differently today and acting on those new lessons. And we're building a great tomorrow because you're not going to bring the problems in from today because you can't handle them. So that's the key part of anybody who struggles with mental health disorders, challenges, is to forgive yourself, accept your whole story, and then put that effort, put the lessons into today, and you'll find it is a great reward and a great way to give yourself that forgiveness.
Now, in your experience, how important is it to talk openly about mental health struggles? Because I know a lot of times people are embarrassed. They don't want to be judged. Like I said in the beginning, thank you for being transparent and extremely vulnerable to share, your life experiences with your mental health struggles. So in addition to, why is it important to open up and talk about it? But like, what advice can you give to people who find it difficult to open up?
The talking is absolutely one of the key things. It's such a powerful tool. And again, I always like to remind people that talk has to start with yourself. I had to come to terms with things first before I could talk to others. And it seems so simple. It's kind of like I was saying, make your mental health a priority each day. Well, remember to have that conversation with yourself and tell yourself it's okay to talk. It's okay to have problems. Because once you start talking, you find out you're not alone. And that was a huge step. I mean, just even beginning to share a few things that I started to tell people about or even mention I had bipolar, all of a sudden I found other people had either that challenge or similar ones. And that took a lot of weight off my shoulders, and it will really help you out. At the second point was it helps you find answers. And I did not expect that because when you're talking to people, and a lot of times the stories and the times you start talking to them, once that starts to build, you'll find you share a lot of common ground and you start to share experiences, and you'll see maybe some solutions you can use. And conversely, the other person may find some answers too. So yeah, the talking about that was extremely important and very powerful. So I encourage everybody to do that. But I completely understand how difficult it is because I certainly didn't want to tell them about my problems for many years. So what I did is, and what I suggest is, if you're struggling with this, is use my story. So I always tell people, if you're struggling with it, even if you wanted to talk to somebody in the family, use my story. It's kind of giving you that third party and saying, I'm going to open the door with something I heard, somebody who told me this story, somebody who else is going through these experiences. And a lot of times that will just crack the door enough that you can start the conversation with anybody. And that will show them it's okay to talk. It's a neat way to do it is some people before me, of course, shared stories as I started to open up, and it allowed me to open up even further. So now I'm trying to do the same. And I like to say, use my story because I got a lot of challenges and I went through a lot of things. So I can definitely relate, and that will give you a lot of talking points. And I believe and I hope that will help people find another way to get past feeling a little odd of talking about their challenges.
Now, how important is it to have a support system? And did you yourself have a support system once you made that pivotal change to take control of your mental health?
I did. It's very important. And it kind of ties into what we were just saying about talking. Because as you talk to people, first yourself and then close family, friends, that will start to build your support system. And what's interesting is what I found was that a lot of people, as I mentioned, are struggling alongside of you. And here we are all working together or interacting all these times. And of course, we don't talk about these mental health challenges we're going through. But once we start opening up, we end up inadvertently, almost, if you will, building a support system of just friends and family. And then what's really neat and what's really interesting is when you start talking about being a mental health warrior, and again, a lot of times, obviously, I have it like on shirts and I'm out talking about it, is I start talking about it anywhere and everywhere. And I built this support system that comes from interactions with strangers or people I'm getting to know. And as you start to get to know them better, it's like you, again, expand your support system but it isn't a struggle. It's all built on that common ground. And you find that mental health can be a great common ground because, again, we all have different challenges in our life, and at the same time, we all need that support. So it's a kind of neat way to build it, tied in with the talking, and it's extremely important to keep building it because while this is a self-empowerment idea and approach to mental health, it is also powerful to be able to work with others because we can all share, our solutions, our struggles, and again, that helps us inadvertently or helps us build our self-confidence, as you will.
Looking back,
Yeah.
what are you grateful for?
So this one's going to sound funny. I'm actually grateful for my bipolar disorder, my alcoholism, and my anxiety disorders.
Now, I have to ask you, why would you be grateful for that?
Exactly. That's what everybody says. And even my other challenges. The reason being is those challenges and putting me, if you will, in the darkness, putting me through some of the negative parts of that, and a lot of that, has opened my eyes to a different view of life. I see things today that I had passed over for years as being not enjoyable, not important. I saw things that I went through where I was having a success, but it didn't mean that much to me. Like I mentioned, on the outside, I had some things, but I was never really proud of it. But having gone through these struggles, and when you have challenges, I am firmly convinced, funny enough, they are also a very positive thing you can be grateful for because they show you how bright, I'm using a little analogy, but how bright the day is, how amazing life is, especially all the little things. And I think it's because before I was so focused on rushing through the day or just trying to hide from every emotion, that today, going out to lunch to me is an amazing experience. And there are so many fun things to do because, again, I'm in control of the direction of my life and I'm really enjoying everything I do, no matter how small it is. And so I like to tell people, believe it or not, I wish I didn't have to go through the struggles. I wish nobody had to go through those. But I see it in myself and with other people I talk to that it actually can become a positive. And you can be grateful for having those because your new life outlook, your new experience on how things are going to go becomes completely different. And it's an amazing, amazing approach.
In your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
Well, definitely being a mental health warrior. So I had to throw that one in. So what that means, though, is a big part of being a mental health warrior is remembering that you can build resilience and you have the power of choice. So again, remember this is that self-help, self-empowerment. And what people sometimes forget is, just like I was saying, I have a ton of tools, lifestyle choices. But at the end of the day, every single person gets to pick what works for them. And they get to build kind of their own toolkit, their own path. And you can take your life in the direction that works for you. You can accumulate and build all the warrior tools. And so the best way to build resilience is to always remember that you get to pick what works for you. And if it doesn't work for others, or you find something that works for you again, and that lifestyle shift is perfect for you, that's an amazing way to start building the resilience. And I think it helps because it gives people back that power because you're not saying you must do this. I'm trying to show people all these different ways, and there's also even other ways out there to take care of your mental health. And the amazing thing to remember is as a warrior, we get to grow as we go. So we get to choose the solutions that work, and then we get to keep changing and setting the direction for our life. And having all of that power again is just an amazing way to have resilience. Because no matter where life challenges throw you, you know you can keep correcting and moving your life forward on the things you value and find important.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time. This was such a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you. Can you take the time to let everyone know how they can either get copies of your books or get involved with your mental health program, Mental Health Warrior?
So the best thing is that everything's on my website, bruceschutter.com. So it's SCHUTTER. But I also tell people, because I know that's a tricky spelling, to type into any of the search browsers, Mental Health Warrior Program. It'll bring you to that website. And there you'll see all the books, You'll also see that these coins we talked about, the Mental Health Warrior Challenge coins, think of that as something you can carry in your pocket to always have that reminder that you're a warrior, and you have that motivation and guidance that's on the back. And then it will lead you to, and I like to make sure I tell people, on that site, you'll see we have a link to a podcast that I've been starting out to try and let people know more of my experiences and how they can use the tools. We also have a free book to get you started. So as I mentioned, there's a lot to a warrior. So I put together a free book that's available, and you can also sign up for a newsletter. So trying to give lots of resources and ways to find information. All that's on the website, bruceschutter.com, or just searching on it. And again, then there's ways to contact us and ways throughout, just like where the podcast goes out to all sorts of sites, just like yours. We could just keep growing the audience. You can find information throughout any of the sites to go and look at any of these books and the coins. It'll explain stuff to you. All that stuff is available like through Amazon for the books and things like that. There's the ebooks and the coins. Again, we have a little store. So I think that kind of sums up where all the materials are. What I just like to remind people is there's lots of free materials to get you started. And I encourage you to go there and download them, read the blog posts I put up and things like that to start your journey. Because the best thing I like to tell people is you have the power to change your life. It's right there in your grasp. And the only question on the table is, are you going to do something today? And I know you will. So I like to tell people that too.
Love it. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
I just want to let everybody know that everybody has the power inside themselves to be a warrior. And I like to remind people with my story and letting people hear all those depths and the deep things that happen, the dark things that happen, that you can change your life at any time. You always have the power. I don't care how many challenges you had. I found my way out. If I can do it, you can too. And I know that's a saying a lot of people use, but I really believe it, and I want people to hear it, because everybody does have the power to be a warrior, because within yourself, you can control the direction of your life, and you can get comfortable with your emotions and just have an amazing life. So that's my last words of encouragement.
Well, Bruce, thank you once again for being a guest on the show. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, are you really loving this podcast, or did you really enjoy this week's episode? Then please subscribe, like, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.